This is Lyndon Allardyce with BrightSign. Today we're going to cover how the BrightAuthor software works, talk about some of the benefits, and then also explore some features and hopefully answer lots of questions about using BrightAuthor. So BrightAuthor is a free desktop application for Windows that BrightSign provides. It allows you to do a variety of things with our products, both standalone, on a local network, or with our cloud service as well. And today we'll talk about a lot of those features, key features of the new 4.6 software, and show you how to build some different presentations. So the process of putting together a presentation for BrightAuthor is pretty straightforward. First, we start with your content, and this can be your social media feeds, live video, depending on which player you have, images, videos, HTML widgets. You then put that together in a BrightAuthor presentation after you pick what kind of layout you want. And once you're finished putting together your presentation, you can easily publish it to a player on your network, or if you're doing a standalone project, publish it to a flashcard and insert it in the player. Or if you're using our cloud service, you can upload your presentation to the BrightSign network and then deploy it to one or more groups on your devices. There are different types of presentations that you can build in BrightAuthor. The simplest is a looping presentation with no interactivity. You just add your image and video content, and the player automatically loops from the first piece of video to the last video, or first image to last image, or first HTML site to the last site, over and over indefinitely. You can also build interactive presentations in BrightAuthor. These are cases where you're using, for example, a motion sensor, barcode scanner, a touch screen, or maybe you're building a presentation to do a video wall. You can also do that using an interactive presentation, or you need to control the BrightSign using a PC, your phone, using the BrightSign app or some other app, or a Crestron controller. A number of different types of devices can be used to interact with the players. The players can also be used to create a video wall. We have a bright wall feature that we'll talk about today as well that allows you to create looping walls very easily, whether it's you're playing one piece of content that's stretched over multiple screens, or you're using individual pieces of content to get the highest possible resolution on each screen. We'll show you how you can build a presentation easily using the bright wall feature. BrightAuthor does allow you to do layouts as well. So whether you're doing a full screen presentation, multi-zone presentation where maybe you have a ticker feed, a Twitter feed scrolling at the bottom of the screen, or you have some a live data feed or a live media feed, like with text, with video and images playing on the side, or just a scrolling playlist of images. You can do lots of different layouts in BrightAuthor. One new feature in BrightAuthor 4.6 is what's called mosaic mode. In the past, players either played one video or multiple videos on the screen at the same time, one or two. There wasn't a limit to other types of zones, so whether it be ticker or the clock or images, you could have pretty much as many of those as you wanted. With mosaic mode, you can have multiple videos on the screen, more than two videos, so long as you don't exceed the full resolution that the player is using. So if the player is set to 1080, you can have lots of little videos that add up to a total of 1920 by 1080 on the screen. And we'll show you a demo of that, as well as how you can easily build a mosaic presentation as well. So as I mentioned earlier, we announced new players, Series 3 players, recently. BrightAuthor 4.6 adds support for those. All of the Series 3 players now support HTML. All of them also support H.265 content. Customers are used to our use of H.265 for 4K playback because it is much smaller, a much higher compression ratio and much smaller file size, cut down on the amount of bandwidth, especially if you're streaming. All of the Series 3 players now, from HD to 4K, support this H.265 content. So you can get your bandwidth savings and your size savings no matter what resolution content that you're creating. BrightAuthor 4.6, as I said, in addition to adding mosaic mode, also supports multiple zones, supports the bright wall feature for building video walls easily, and we'll also talk about how you can easily put together interactive presentations, as I said, using anything from a touch screen to buttons or commands that are sent over the network. Talking a little bit more about Mosaic mode, as I indicated, whether you're doing HD playback or 4K playback, Mosaic mode allows you to put multiple videos on the screen that add up to the total resolution that you're using. So for example, if you're doing a 4K project, you can have multiple 1080p windows on the screen. You can have a 4K window and a 1080 window, or you could have lots of SD windows, 720 by 480 on the screen. If you're doing a 1080 project, you could have multiple windows that are smaller than SD that, again, add up and give you lots of different video playback options on the screen. This you can use for playing back videos, for playing back feeds. Maybe you have multiple cameras that you want to be able to display on the screen at the same time. And most of these cameras support lower resolution mode, so you can get lots of different views on the screen all at once. And as I said, we'll go through, I'll show you what one of these Mosaic presentations look like, and also show you how you can easily build one. So next, what we'll do is we'll look at some of the different types of presentations that you can create using BrightAuthor. Here's a couple of thumbnails showing a few of the examples that we'll cover. This GoPro Mosaic example is over here on the right side. I'll show you how this particular project is built. This is an example of a zones project that's done with HTML. So where the animation and some of the graphics is done with HTML, but still played in different zones on the player. So we'll switch over to BrightAuthor. And one of the first things we'll take a look at is one of the Mosaic presentations. So go ahead and open that up. We'll take a quick look. So this is a GoPro Mosaic presentation where we have some content playing in a zone here, as well as a number of smaller zones on the screen, all playing video, right? And so if we take a look over, and this here is the lone image zone on the screen. And so if we take a quick look at the layout tab, so here in BrightAuthor, edit and layout, we can go and see how the types of zones that are here, so these are all video zones. And if you click on the zone over here on the lower left, it tells you what's the maximum resolution that you can play in that particular window. So the way the Mosaic mode works, so for example, if this is a window that supports what's called CIF at 352 by 288, that means the video in here can't be any bigger than that. So you wouldn't use Mosaic mode to, say, take a 1080 video and scale it down into a little window. The videos that play in that space can't exceed the resolution that's listed here. But as you can see, instead of just being able to play 2 videos on the screen, you can have a large number of videos that are playing on the screen using the Mosaic mode. And I'll show you how a project like this can be built. For this particular presentation, I have published on one of my devices. So if I click here on the Manage tab, let's see, actually I do not. So let's go back into here, we'll hit Publish. I have some different players set up on my local network. I'm going to publish this presentation to my 4K unit. And if I go back to my Manage tab, and once the player refreshes, we'll be able to see a screenshot of what the content looks like on that player as it's playing. And so the player's set up to take snapshots like every minute or two. And so while that's while it's coming up, I'm going to show you how you can build a Mosaic presentation. So if I go and do a new presentation, I call it Mosaic Test. And let's say, for example, we want to build an HD presentation. And when we create the presentation, it asks us if you want to do a standard one or do one in Mosaic mode. So I'm going to say that we want to do a Mosaic presentation. And it gives us a simple full screen template that's full screen, all 1080. So what we do first is we go to the Layout tab, and we're going to remove this 1080 zone because we want to be able to do some smaller ones, and our maximum resolution is 1080. So if I come in here and say I want to add a zone, it now gives me the option here at the bottom to choose some smaller zones that I can add to my layout. And so, for example, if I say I want a few different windows at that resolution, I can add a window, add several of these windows that are at that resolution on the screen, for example. And once those are added, I can add another zone in. So let's say I want these to play over a background. So I can come in here and say I want to add a playlist, for example. So we'll add an image zone here. We'll make that full screen. And then here, in the same way, we can specify if we want the image to be above or behind the video. So since it's full screen, we want it to be behind, and which is what is default to here. So relative video, we want images to play in the background. So now if I go back to my playlist view, I can select the zone that I want to add some images to, and I can select a folder that has some content in it, and I can then add those into the project. Right. So for example, we'll go here to our demos folder, and we will add some images in here that will drag into that space. So I selected a different folder. I can then come in and select some different images that I want to add in to play behind my other content. And now I can select any of my video zones, and I can drag in content that as long as it fits that particular resolution. So here are some videos I already created that are lower resolution that I can then drag in for playback, and I can select my different zones where I can add one or more videos into each zone for playback. This can be a video, it can be a video stream, for example. So if I scroll down here and I want to add like a motion JPEG stream, or I want to add a video stream from a camera, but I can add the content to the different zones there, and then I can publish it. And so, for example, if I go back over here to Manage, where we published the previous Mosaic project, I can right-click on it and say I want to view the snapshots. And so this is the GoPro project that I published. It has the video here, all these other videos playing over here, and then an image over here on the side. And so we built a smaller version of the same project where we only had 3 video windows on the screen, but similar idea. So we add your different zones, add in your content, and then publish it to the player. And so, all right, so it's pretty straightforward to create the mosaic. As I said, the important thing to remember is the total number of video windows you add has to fit into whatever resolution that you laid out. All right, so that's both mosaic and shows you zones. So I'll show you another zones project. This one was created with HTML playing in the different windows. So you have a multi-zone project. This one has a background video that plays behind the HTML. So we'll go ahead and open up that project here. And so we have a few different zones here. There's a background zone that has a coffee video playing. There is an HTML menu that's playing as well on the screen. And then there's a smaller zone here. This is playing a social media feed for Starbucks that's on using the social media aggregator site called Tint. So there's a feed that's generated and running on the site, and that will play in this little window as the menu plays on the screen, and also as the video loops in the background. And so, for example, let's see if I have, so actually I have that published here on this unit. This is on my HD3. So again, if I go in and look at remote snapshots, so here we have our background video that has this content in it and video playing in the background. We have HTML that does this menu, and what happens is as the content plays, different items in the menu are highlighted. So if I click on a different screenshot here, then I see a different menu item highlighted, and I click on a different screenshot here. These snapshots are taken every minute. There's a different item highlighted, and as you can see, this here is the feed from Tintup for Starbucks. And so as we change what we're looking at, we notice that this feed is playing over here as well. So both of these, both the smaller zone here is HTML. This larger, the background here is just a video playing, and then the HTML menu, which is also full screen, that's also done in HTML as well. So that's an example where the zones, you're able to put a video, or you could do a playlist of videos in the background very easily in BrightAuthor, and then on top of it you can put whatever HTML content that you're using, and any transparent regions of that content, the video that's in the background would then show through. I can show you, I'll show another zones example, and this one doesn't use HTML, but also has multiple zones as well on the screen. It's also pretty straightforward. So we'll open up this one here. So this one, we'll go ahead and take a quick look at the layout. So here we have a video zone. We have a playlist of images on the right side, and then we have a scrolling ticker at the bottom on the screen. If we go back to our playlist view, then we can see the items there. Now the scrolling portion of the ticker doesn't preview, but if I go to preview, I can see the image playback, the video playback, and the text here is just listed as static because the preview doesn't show the scroll here. But I can publish this to one of the players so that you can see what it looks like. It looks similar. We have our video and image content playing in this zone. We have our a playlist playing over here on the right, and we have our ticker here at the bottom of the screen. So I can look and see if this is, so here's an example here where we have it published and running on the player. Again, it's set to take screenshots of different parts in playback. So if, for example, we wanted to recreate something like this presentation and maybe use Twitter instead of RSS, what I can do is I can go to New Presentation, and we say we want to do our test zones presentation. And this one will be standard instead of mosaic. I'll choose full screen so you can see how the other zones are added. So if I go to layout, now if I want to change the size of the initial zone that's here so I can add in something on the right and on the bottom, I can manually go in and enter width and height for a zone to make it smaller, or I can just grab the corner and size it appropriately. So I can either adjust it manually, or I can do it by entering values if I know exactly how wide and exactly how tall I want a particular zone to be. On the right side of the project that we had, they had an image zone. And so I can add zone, choose images, and then once I have it there, I can go over and, as I said, I can size it the same way. And, I can make it taller. And if I'm not exactly sure about the exact height, I can click on this zone and I see its height is 930. So when I go back to that one, I can make sure, it's exactly the same height, for example. And now if I add, maybe we want this to be longer than the original one, right? So you can go in and say, okay, I want that part to be full screen. And I can add the ticker zone, which is where the information is scrolling at the bottom. And again, I can drag it there and resize it for how we want it to be. And once we're done here, we can then go back and add elements to it. One of the things you can do with any of the layouts that you create is you can save them. So for example, if I hit save, I can give it a name, and I can then retrieve this layout later when I create a new presentation. So if I now go back to my playlist view, again, here is my main zone that I can add content to just by grabbing it from the left side and dragging it over. And I have my zone on the right that's image only. You'll notice when I click on it, the videos in my playlist disappear, since this zone doesn't support video playback, just images, and I can then drag over the image that I want to play. And when I click on the bottom zone, I can either choose a text file for playback here, or if I want to say have information displayed from a Twitter feed, I can enter the handle that I want to listen to. I can specify how often to check in, if I want to check in every minute. And then when it says authenticate, all you need is a valid Twitter login. Right? So if you have a Twitter account, you can use that to authenticate any feed that you want to listen to. So check that. On there. And my Twitter authentication doesn't seem to be popping up at the moment. All right, well, we'll set that aside for the moment. checking to see why my Twitter connection is not popping up. Should be. I'm not quite sure why the Twitter isn't popping up at the moment. But as I said, pretty straightforward to put the zones together, change the layout however you want, save the template, and then add different elements on the screen for playback. I know Anne said we'll take questions throughout, so if there are any questions, let us know. All right, so pretty easy to put together zones, different layouts, and what you can always do is if you see a demo project that's on our site or have a project that you were using before, you don't always have to start off new. You can open an existing project and publish and make a copy of it, and then go in and add and remove elements that you do or don't want in the project to build your new ones. You don't necessarily have to save a template and start off brand new if you have examples of layouts that you're looking to use. All right, so we talked a little bit about zones, talked some about Mosaic. One of the other items we wanted to look at today are interactive presentations. And so, for example, these can be presentations that are using network commands, presentations that are using buttons, presentations that are using touch. So for example, if I go here, so we'll start off with just a blank presentation. We'll show you how easy it is to build one that's interactive. So we'll go here, we're going to do our interactive presentation, and then I can show you something that looks a little more advanced. So we're going to build a presentation, start off full screen. So the view you see in BrightAuthor when you first log in is a simple looping view. So as in, you're dragging content, it plays from the beginning to the end. Over here on the right side in the top corner, you can make the window interactive. And so this is more free form. So anything you drag into an interactive view does not loop, right? The only thing, the first item in the list is what plays when you drag something in. It'll have a little home icon next to it, and that means that this is going to play. And if you then drag other content into the list, nothing happens with that other content until you add connections from your starting position that has your home icon to other positions that are in to other states or other files that are in your list. So for example, let's say a very, very simple interactive presentation is where you have looping content, whether it be one video or a playlist of videos, and you say you have it connected to a button, so someone's going to come over and push a button and something else is going to play. It's the same logic that you would use for motion sensor. You have looping content, someone walks by, that motion sensor is seen by the bright sign like a button press, and then it plays a piece of content. And building a project like that is very straightforward. So we have our starting file. These buttons here at the top from 0 to 7, these are what are called GPIO buttons. So that's what you would use for your physical buttons that you push, simple contact closure. Motion sensors use those too. So if you ever see a display at a store that has, buttons that you push down and they might light up, these are the types of buttons that these represent here. And so for any of the players that have the GPIO port, you can build a project like this. So for example, if I click on button 0 and I click and select where I want to draw a connection from, I can put the mouse near the bottom of the file and draw a connection to this video. And what this means now is that this video will play, and if someone pushes button 0 while this video is playing, then this video here will play. And at the moment, the way it stands, nothing would happen after this video plays. It would just loop because there's nothing telling it what to do when it finishes. So there is a media end event right here, meaning this applies to any videos or any audio files. And so I can draw connections here back to my first file. So now I have an example where I have a looping video. Someone touches it, someone pushes a button, or walks by and triggers a motion sensor. This video plays, and when this is finished playing, it returns to the looping video. And if someone pushes the button while this video is playing, nothing happens because there is no button attached to this video. So in order for there to be some action that this video responds to, we would have to add an event. This video saying, if the button is pushed early, for example, I want it to immediately go back here. So you could draw a connection like that. So now a button will start this video and a button will return home. Or maybe what you want to do is have the button that's pushed down here restart the video. So here where it's asked us for transition, this is model LS video, that's what we're looking at. So now our button press here will simply restart this video. And so adding an event, so something that a particular file will listen to, is just a question of attaching it to that particular file and then indicating what you want it to do, right? And so, for example, let's say that when this video is playing, you would like to be able to mute the audio with a button, right? And so I can say I want to add a button 1 here, and indicate that when it's pressed, we're not changing to another file, we're not restarting the existing file, but something that's more advanced is I can come in here under the Advanced tab, say I want to add a command, and then you can say that I want to change the volume for the particular zone, increase or decrease it there, or you can specify that you want to mute the audio on, say, HDMI when this button is pushed, right? And so you can add controls for things like muting, increasing and decreasing video. You could add a button to pause, for example. So if I wanted, in addition to being able to change the audio, I wanted to be able to add a command that said pause when I push this button, then you could do that as well. And then similarly, if you did that, you could go in again and say I want to add a command that's going to resume when I push the second button, right? And so adding events to the videos is pretty straightforward and simple. So let's say, for example, instead of being able to pause and mute, we want to do something a little simpler, where we have a main menu, we have 4 videos to play, and we want to add a button for each video. And in addition to that, we want to make sure that no matter which video is playing, that pressing button 1 always plays this one, pressing button 3 always plays this one, no matter which video is playing. The easiest way to do that is we can say select all of them, and then click on each button, and when we draw the connection to the destination, that button will be added to all of the ones that are highlighted. And you can do that with like hitting Control-A, or we can click and drag to make our selection. But the
Brendan,
idea
we've got a couple of
yeah.
questions. I thought I'd just interrupt at this point. Can you trigger a video based on an RSS update, like a score change or on a certain sports game, for example?
Yes, yes you can. And so, for example, let's say the easiest way to do that would be with a variable, right? And so, for example, let's say you're on this video playing, and that's probably the easiest way to do it. So let's say I go to Properties, I add a variable, and my variable is going to be status. And what I'm going to, before I do that though, I need to, the simplest way for me to do this is to log into my BrightAuthor Network account and do a feed there. So I'm going to sign in. So the simple answer is yes, you can. And the easiest way to do it is if you have control of the feed that has this information in it. Let's try this again. If you have control of the feed that has the information in it, then you can create a variable that is where the variable name matches an entry in the feed, and then here in the project you can indicate that you want to do something when that particular variable equals some value, or is greater than some value, or less than some value, so. And if you want to do something more complex than that, you can do comparisons of variables. You can say if it's greater than, if the score is greater than 5, do this. If the score is greater than 10, do this. And so you can do that and use that to trigger different pieces of content based on, a comparison. If it's equal to something, if it's changed to be greater than a number or less than a number, you can do that here. And so the easiest way for us to do it is we can go into properties and we can go into variables and we'll add a variable. We'll start off with it having a default value of 1. We'll come back and change it shortly. But it'll let us do something here. So let's say, for example, you want, this is interactive, right? And we have, you have some different videos that are here. And normally when you push a button, it plays this video here. But you can go into the event of the button push and say, I want to do what's called a conditional check, right? I go into conditional statement. I say I want to add, I say if my status is equal, and that's the name of the variable I gave, if my status is equal to 10, then instead of going to model LS on the button push, I want to go to the model HDG, right? And so you can add that there. You can add another condition that says my status is greater than 20, then I want to play, a different video when the button is pushed. So you can add this conditional check here that happens on the button press. You can also add a timer. So, for example, if we want to do a media end, we'll say this is the looping video at the top. It's looping over and over again, and every time it finishes and restarts, we want to do the same kind of check to say that if my value that I specified is less than 8, for example, when it finishes, then instead of going back to itself, it's going to transition to a different piece of content. So you can do that there as well. So that's one way, and so then that variable can be updated using a feed, right? And so if I go back to my properties and I go back to variables, instead of it being a private variable, I can make it be a network variable. Before I do that, I can come here under my feeds tab. I can add a feed. In my case, I'm going to specify that it is from my BrightAuthor network account, but as you see, you can put in a URL. So you can put in a URL for the feed. So it can be any kind of URL from any source. But in my case, if I want to say I have a feed called message1 and I want to use that for my update, I can come in here. And so now I can make my variable, instead of being a private variable, I can make it a network variable, and I can specify which feed is going to be used to update it. And so then if I go back to my BrightAuthor network account or wherever the source of my feed is, and the entry that I used here was called message1, I believe, message1. So I can go to message1 in my account, or at least wherever you use. I can enter the name of my variable is going to be status, and I can enter my value to whatever it is, and I can save it. But what that means now is if this value changes, if I go and change it here, then whatever conditions I've set in my project will, the next time it finishes, it's going to look at the value and use that to determine what video to play here. So that's one way that you could use a feed to update, to change content on the player. If you want to do more advanced calculations, you can use a plugin to download that value from the feed and run any number of different kinds of conditions that you want to change content. So instead of just looking at the value, you can look at the last time the value changed, and if you want to play specific content, if the value is changing more than every 3 seconds, then you can do that by using a plugin.
Thanks, Lyndon. And then another related question, how do you update variables on a local network only?
Okay, so you can do it a number of ways. I mean, if you have feeds running on like a server on your network, you can do it. But also, if you can update it directly on the player. So for example, let's see, do I have my, I have a chalk demo that uses text and variables for a wine and dinner menu. And here it is right there. So I can show you what that looks like. So we'll rotate that. So it's a portrait example. All of the values in this menu are done with variables and displays here on my network. So if I was using an iOS device, an iPad or iPhone, I could download my BrightAuthor app. Or if I am using anything that can log into player, anything with a browser. So right now I'm logged into this player's. It has what's called I'm logged into the variables page on the player. In this particular example, this project has what's called a custom variable page. So the imagery and the layout is set up to match the actual on-screen presentation as well. And as you can see, there are variables here that are used in that presentation. And so if I wanted to come in and change, you know, the cost of this, right, I could do that and then save it. And that would then be updated on the device. So on the local-only network, if you have players running with variables on them, if you don't have a web server running or don't want to set one up, you can log into devices directly, either using our iOS app or using your web browser, and change the variable values there.
Great. Thank you. And then a question about earlier, you added a mute command to the first video that was triggered from the home page. How does the user know they're able to mute the video?
So that would be, you can include it in the project. It could be something as simple as the buttons that are sitting in front of the screen have a little template on them that indicates that. You can make it part of the imagery on the screen as well. So for example, if I say I want to add touch, you could, for example, this video has a text message in it that says touch to learn more. So it's telling the user what they should do. So you could have a similar messaging on, you know, overlaid on your video where you say, you know, for example, you know, where you have a 1, 2, 3, 4. And then if you have a button pad in front of them also buttons 1, 2, 3, 4, then, you know, that can be what indicates to the person that this is available for them to use. So it depends on, you know, what kind of interactivity you're doing. You know, if it's touch, then it can just be part of the image or video that you have on the screen. If it's physical buttons, if it's like the USB button panel, you can have a printed overlay on those. And if it's hard buttons that are GPIO, then it could just be something that you have, you know, wherever the buttons are physically located to tell the person that that's what they can do.
Great. And then being cognizant of time, we do have 20 minutes left. Someone was asking if you're going to be covering scheduling in this webinar.
We can talk a little bit. We can talk a little bit about scheduling. Scheduling differs a little depending on whether or not you're using our hosted service or local. But let's say, for example, we're just doing local. And in each of the published examples I've done before, whatever I was in, I published full screen. But when you're here on the Publish tab, it shows you here at the top that it's nonstop, meaning it's playing all the time. I can click on the menu and hit delete to clear what's there, right? Over here, I see whatever presentations are in that particular folder, but I can drag my presentation into the menu, and instead of it being all the time, it's just listed for 1 hour. I can open up the schedule and specify that I want maybe this to be recurring. And instead of all day, every day, I want it to be, maybe it's a morning project. So it's from 9 to noon in the morning, and I want it to be every weekday. And I can specify, you know, my starting point and my ending point if I want, or if I just want to specify starting, I can do that. But I add it to the schedule, I hit OK, and now this is in, you know, Monday through Friday, 9 to noon. And I can drag something else in, and maybe I have a special presentation that's only, you know, early afternoon, so it's only for an hour and a half, again, every weekday, and that's added in there, and I can drag my same schedule in again, but I don't have to drag either. If I just double-click on the schedule, it will show me a list of presentations, in this case, since it's a local network example, that are in that folder. And so if I wanted my interactive presentation to play for the rest of the day, I could then, again, go in and specify that it's recurring. And maybe instead of every day in the afternoon, I want to play it on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, right? And so now it's added in for Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and I can drag the other one in, again, for afternoon play, and this time recurring and weekly. If I choose weekly, that lets me pick individual days of the week that it's going to play. And since I have no end date set, this is going to play indefinitely using this layout. So using the schedule is pretty easy. You just drag in what you want, double-click on it, and specify the time frame. And you don't, these time settings here are not rigid. So if I want to come in and say, I want this to start at 9, you know, 23, I can come in and edit the time so it's more granular, right? And, you know, so now it's starting at 9:23 instead of 9 o'clock exactly. So you have a lot of flexibility. And when you're doing a local schedule, so just one unit, just on your local network, if you're doing a more involved schedule like this, under the schedule menu here in BrightAuthor, you can save this schedule file. And then when you quit and reopen BrightAuthor, the schedule will be there, but you can come back to this Publish tab, go to the schedule menu, and open the schedule, and it'll put the items back in for the schedule that you use. So hopefully that answered the scheduling question.
Yeah, thanks, Lynn. And back to the touch presentation, we have a question about how do you create the touch area?
Okay, so I've got my videos. We talked a little bit about buttons. So if I click on touch, the little finger, and I draw a line to one of the videos, you'll notice that there's this dotted line here at the top that goes all the way around. So I can change its size. So I now have it a little box around the 4K player here, and I can specify I want the 4K video to play. And from within here, I can add other regions. So I can go in, and just the same way, I can click and add. I can specify which model that I want to have play based on the region that I'm putting in. And I can go in and do this, for all of the different models, all of the videos that I have until I'm finished adding, my touch areas. And so I'm here, I'm adding my 4 regions to play my 4 different videos. And if I want to say that I want a generic touch region here on the BrightSign logo, that whenever it's touched, I go back to my main video, I can do that. And if I want to add a touch region, in the lower corner that doesn't transition anywhere, so I choose remain on current state, but when added, will will mute the HDMI when touched in the, I left too soon. When touched here, it will mute, and I add another touch region, say in the right corner, that remains on the current state. And when I go to Advanced and add a command and volume, it will unmute the HDMI. So now, and if I double click on any of the touch areas, I can see all my regions, right? So I have 2 regions that don't play any content, that does my muting and unmuting. And then I have 4 regions. As I click on each, it changes the coordinates you'll see change, and the file that's going to be triggered with each touch changes as well. And so that's one way you can build interactivity easily. Unlike HTML, there's no JavaScript coding required here to do your touch. Really, you're just drawing boxes on whatever part of the screen is there. And those will be active whenever this particular file is playing, right? So you can then add touch regions to other files. So for example, when I've switched to my videos, I want to make sure that whenever they're finished, they all go back home. So I click on my media ends, I have them all highlighted, and I draw a connection for home. So it adds the media end to all of them. And if I want, for example, when want someone to be able to interrupt one of the videos, again, I can add my touch event to a video that says, okay, if someone's here and they touch it goes back to the main video. And I can make it full screen. If they touch anywhere on the screen, it'll go back to the main video. But adding touch is it's pretty straightforward. You just go in and you draw your connection from what state you want the touch to be active in back home, and then you can specify what part of the screen you want to be active, whether it's a full screen or just one little part of the screen. So very straightforward and very easy to do. And you can test this with a mouse. So if you don't have a touch screen when you're building it, you can plug a mouse into the player and use it to test the screen. And you can do this also. The preview function works for touch interactivity. I don't believe I used this. I think it was only this model 4K file. So if I go here and I say preview, and I play, I think it was the 4K one I have for touching to go back home. I touch that section, it plays the video. I touch again, it goes back. So you can preview the touch pretty easily on your screen as well to see that it has the behavior that you're looking for.
Great. Lyndon, we do have 12 minutes left, and there have been multiple questions about Bright Wall, so I'm not sure how many topics you have left, but that would be one we want to make sure we cover.
Okay, all right. So Bright Walls. So using the Bright Wall feature, you can make looping walls very easily. Two types. So here under the Create tab in BrightAuthor, Bright Wall, I'd say I want to build a Bright Wall presentation. And here first I can start off by giving it a name. So we'll start off our first example with a stretched. The stretched example is where you are going to build a wall that uses one piece of content that is stretching over multiple screens. So the first part is you create what's called a configuration file. So I can click Create Configuration File. I can pick what model it's for, what resolution it's going to use, if it's going to be landscape or portrait. There's bezel compensation information here over on the right side, and you can specify what your wall is going to look like. 2 rows, 2 columns, right? And also the domain. The domain is important if you have multiple walls on your network. If you have 2 walls, if you have 2 2x2 walls, you don't want them to use the same domain, because otherwise there'll be crosstalk and you will have synchronization problems. So that's all the domain value is. So I can set this to 33, for example. I can go ahead and hit save. It asks me to name my configuration. I'll say it's stretched, and here a wall on the save. Okay. And now it'll say I can create my Bright Wall presentation. And so here is where I get to pick if it's regular or stretched and how it's scaled. And when the screens boot up, this is checked by default. They display like screen 1, screen 2, screen 3, screen 4 on the screen until the video starts playing. If you don't want to see that, you can uncheck it. You can also specify, what you're doing for audio. When you're using Bright Wall to do your video wall, only the master unit has audio. You can do walls with a standard BrightAuthor project. They're not as simple, but then you can have audio for all your players. In my stretched example, there's just one playlist to add content to, and so it's just a question of scrolling down, picking some content that I want to play, and dragging it in. So if I drag this video here, one video or multiple videos, it doesn't matter. What will happen when I publish this is that all of the players that I publish to will get the video, and it'll be stretched over the 4 screen. And that's all that's involved. You say I want to do a stretched wall, you add in as much content as you want. You can also use this if you have screens that have an HDMI input. You can use the stretched wall to play live video over multiple screens. That requires that every device, every Bright sign, has access to the signal, so it knows. So it'll say I'm going to play, the lower right part of the signal. But you can use the stretched view to play back streams, like if you're streaming from a camera over the network, or a live HDMI input for devices that have HDMI input, or just static video content. So as I said, pretty straightforward. You say I want stretched, load up all your content, and that's it. If you want to do a regular wall, so we can go in and say we want a new Bright Wall, this one is going to be the one that's not stretched, so we have unique pieces of content for each one. Here we'll browse, so I'm not saving into the desktop folder. Let's say we'll do there. And we'll go in and say we want to do our configuration. So here, let's say we want to do a 1x3 wall. So 1 row, 3 monitors. We'll go ahead and save. And this will be a 1 by, I guess it really is 3 by 1, huh? Either way, just a rough. Create our Bright Wall. We're going to say regular this time. And so here, I'm going to browse, and I'm going to select a folder that has some videos that's for a row of screens. And here, again, it's pretty straightforward. It shows you the 3 screens, because I said I wanted 1 row. And I can click on each screen here, so I can add my content. So I have a piece of content for a left screen, I have a piece of content for a middle screen, and I have a piece of content for right screen. So this content's already been authored. Started off as 1 video, was split into 3 videos. And the benefit of doing a regular versus stretched is that every screen can be full resolution. So if they're HD screens, then each one is 1920 by 1080, right? So then times 3 for what your final full resolution is going to be. Or if it's 3 4K screens or 4 4K screens, if you're doing regular, then every screen gets full resolution. It does require that you edit the content beforehand, And if you don't want to do that, then you can do the stretched version where you're just using one 4K piece of video, one HD video that's then stretched over the different display. And you said there were some, so I guess there might be some follow-up questions, but as I said, pretty straightforward to do a looping wall using the Bright Wall feature.
Great, that's good for now. No more questions?
Okay. You said no more questions? All right. So, yeah, pretty straightforward. And one of the nice things with BrightAuthor is we talked before about using HTML. You can do walls in HTML as well. Or you can do, for example, you can use HTML to do a ticker. So one thing you can do with HTML that's not currently plumbed into BrightSign is if you build a standard presentation, you can use an HTML widget to do a scrolling ticker over multiple screens. Just by publishing one of the HTML files will specify the source of the ticker. So like it could be an RSS feed or a live media feed from your BrightSign network account. And then you just publish the HTML file to their respective screens, and you have, for example, a ticker that's scrolling, from the rightmost screen across all 4 displays, and it looks like it's just one continuous ticker, like it's, synchronized. And you can have a regular BrightAuthor project that you build, and that ticker can just play on top of it without any problem. So I have an example of a portrait one that was done that I can open by one of my colleagues. And so here, if we look at, I think it's here under other zones. Yep, there we go. So this, this is, then the nice thing about this is the ticker, the zone that has the HTML widget, doesn't really care where it is or what the size of the zone is that you put it. It's designed to do one thing and one thing only, and it's going to play a ticker at the bottom of the screen no matter what else is going on the screen. So you can build your presentation to be multi-zone, to have, all your video content and other content, and you just add this HTML widget to your project, and you will get a scrolling ticker at the bottom. This one is the master project, and so you publish the slave project, I can open that one up as well, to your second player, and you'll get 2 side-by-side screens that have a ticker that's going to scroll from the rightmost screen all the way across the leftmost screen and continue. And you can use that kind of HTML example to do, 4 screens, as many screens as you want, where you're synchronizing scrolling text content across the bottom of the screen. And it's just another example of how you can easily add some HTML functionality on top of, image and video content that you're building and playing back in BrightAuthor. And that portion you can build just simple drag and drop and just pop in the HTML, whether it's a weather widget or a ticker like this, or the menu we saw earlier, the coffee menu, where it had HTML menu and a HTML social media feed. All those items can just be dropped in on top of other video content that you're using in BrightAuthor. I know we're tight on time, so I don't know if there are any other questions, Anne, that people might have. We can try and squeeze in before we're all done.
I've been answering a bunch of the questions privately, so I think we're good if you had another topic in the last 3 minutes to cover.
Let's see. So we talked a little bit about live text when we were talking about variables. Let's see. I'll open another project example that we can see. We talked about Mosaic. Here, I'll show you a little more involved interactive example. This is a demo for a car dealership, and it's multiple zones. So it has HTML playing content on the right side of the screen. What's a little different about it is the main content plays in zone 1, and it has a logo here, but the interactivity happens down here in zone 6. And so I'll open up one of these touch things you see. So there's at the bottom of the screen are just 4 buttons, and each of them plays a different video or plays a different image. And the way that they do it, since it's in another zone, is for each that's touched, if we go over to advanced, it sends a message. And the zone messages that can be sent between zones. And so this is how you would have interactivity in one zone controlling content in another. So each touch, if I go to advanced, sends a message. This says Bent for Bentley. If I go to advanced, then service. And if I go back to my main zone, instead of touch input, they have these little zone message icons. So each of the videos here is listening for a different zone message. And if this particular zone message comes in, then that's the video that plays. And so in that sense, the main zone is listening for messages, and the messages are being sent from this zone here. And so, so this is a little more involved interactive example where you've got a touch menu or control in one part of the screen, and you're controlling content in another part of the screen. And an example of something that you could do is instead of having HTML over here, you could have other image content that's also interactive. And every time the Bentley video played, it could send a zone message itself that triggered some content to play over in the right side of the zone. And so there's a number of different ways that you can do it, do more advanced things. I'll bring up another project in case we have more time.
We really don't, but keep going if people want to stay on. Go ahead.
An example of a live text project where there is a video playing that has blank fields on the screen for playback, and in another zone there's text that's overlaid on top of the video. And so in this example, the text is just static. It's not variables like our chalkboard example. It's just static text. But the same text fields could be controlled by a feed. So instead of it, so here actually, this one has some of these are static, and some of these are using a feed for updating these values. And so you have the video plays. The data is pulled down from a feed for playback and overlaid on top of the video that's running in the background. And someone who then needs to make changes to pricing, I'll open up an image that shows you a screenshot of what it looks like. So this is a screenshot from the video, and so there are prices that are listed at the end of these different items here that are all pulled down from the feed, right? And so if I went back to here and I hit publish, I could publish it on one of our players. Oops, that's not what I wanted to publish. I wanted to publish just the burger menu. I want to say it's going to play all the time. So replace. Okay. And then if I then went there and I hit publish, oops, that's missing. But let's see, I thought I had all my files here, but I'm missing one. So that one I'm not sure. But this Baxter Burger demo is available in the fact on our website. You can download it with the video that shows you how it works and with an explanation of how it was built. But as I said, you can use text or variables, live text to drive a number of things. Someone asked specifically about using it to control playback, and in addition to displaying information on the screen, you can definitely use text and feeds to drive what's being displayed, whether it's a different presentation or just a different video on that plays on the screen.
Great. I did just send the demo link out to everyone, as well as the link where this webinar, recorded webinar, will be posted, hopefully by end of day today. So we probably better wrap up. We've gone 3 minutes over. Thank you so much, Lyndon. One other thing to mention, if your question didn't get answered, you can send an email to support@brightsign.biz or contact your salesperson who may be able to help you. Thank you so much for joining, everyone.
Thank you.
We're going to wrap up. Okay, thanks.